Andy, could you take us through a brief sort of history of open track and how it's structured and
so
what the aims are, etc.?
Yeah, so it started off, I think the operative word is brief. I've got to learn to do this in 3 minutes, so if I'm rambling, stop me. It started off, I came back into the sport in my 40s, was doing reasonably well for that age, sort of getting top 10 rankings over 5K and things. I went to the World Masters in Porto Alegre in 2013 and discovered that a meeting with 10,000 people who paid for international flights in an era of mobile phones was being run by paper printouts on a sports hall wall on the other side of town to where you were competing, and thought, have we really not moved on since I left the sport? In the meantime, I had been running a software company that maintains this open source library and building nice web-based solutions, and I'd seen how in many other spheres people have come together and collaboratively built really good solutions that transformed whole industries. And I thought, why is this not happening in running? We all love the sport. There's enough of us around. We just need something to congregate around. And we thought we'd do just my software company, which has 6 people and is based in Wimbledon, was a bit bored of corporate stuff. So we built a site for the Surrey League, which everybody loved, and really streamlined it, and apps to record at the finish line of the funnel, team managers declare on phones. Then Surrey County asked us to build an entry system for the county champs, which went reasonably well. And it then started to take off and interfere with the day job. We then got lucky and we found a European Union grant program for big ideas around open data. And we entered, and we essentially got funded for a year to think really big about how the sport could be more efficient. And you've all seen the competition management system and the results, but the core idea is all the results should be public. They should all be in a standard format, and there should be a central database that's free for anyone to use. So if you're exchanging spreadsheets, you all use the same code for each club. We know who the runners are. We don't waste time saying which kid's in which age group and did we spell their name wrong, because that soaks up time at every level of the sport, organising things. European Athletics got behind it, sort of. Their digital manager was right behind us. Their political executive board didn't understand it so well. So it gradually turned into a company. It's gradually gained steam, but there's a somewhat megalomaniac plan behind it to have this central data hub for athletics and a central format for everything. And then people who want to and have some time on their hands can start to build stuff around that. And I don't see why that wouldn't work. And this may well have brought us above critical mass in the last couple of weeks, because there's just enough enthusiasm that people are seeing why, governing bodies are seeing why they should get behind this a little bit. My dream would be to have one system available that's free or dirt cheap at the point of use for clubs and competition organisers, and just makes it easier to put on meetings and get the results on the web fast.
The thing that I've never really understood is, like, if you go to look at the American systems, and you look at meetings that are coming up in the NCAA, I'm talking about really. You look at the beginning of the week, and I think there's a high tech or something. It's called some system, just as you described, where you can see the entries going on in each event, and then you get to the 1 or 2 days before the actual meeting, and all the seeding's taking place, and then the results are coming out live. And then in some cases, James Thee and I were talking, we watched Andy Butchart run a 3,000 metres over there, not in terms of watching the race, but you can see the 200 metre splits coming up, position in the race, and it was all moving around like that, and it was fantastic.
I've done the same. I live with Jonny Davies, and when he ran 750 in Boston to get the world's indoor standard, I was shouting at statistics. I was like, go on, because he picked it up, and he was, is he going to do it? And then the time pops up, and our whole house were just like cheering at some numbers on a screen. Because you could see it as it was going on. It was amazing.
Well, it wasn't even at the big meetings. I remember Jack Goodwin at the ACC champs, which is kind of like one of the equivalents, like the Mountain, like the Mountain West or something. he had live scores in that, and that was just a stand. It wasn't even conference.
Yeah. Modest plug here. Did you see the live splits of the night of the 10,000 last summer?
I was driving a minibus back, so I didn't see that. No.
Can I just show you one more thing? Because we
go for it.
It currently works with the Seiko timing system. Are you getting my screen?
Yeah.
So here's the results. Here's the splits, but let's just replay it, speed it up. So we had a cycling type leaderboard so that the guys up on the red bus had an iPad, and we had the splits coming through every 200 meters. And if you want to look at different intervals, 200, 400, 1000, there's buttons to do that, and so on. And it's quite helpful when you've got a dozen people in a pack and you're not quite sure who they are and who's in the pack 15 meters behind them. But this stuff, I think it can only work through common published standards getting a bit geeky and people in the sport agreeing to collaborate around them. And then if an equipment firm wants to go off and build something that captures and uploads, wants to display it, it'll be relatively cheap. Because right now, the only people building cool kit, or until recently, were the ones who get contracts to supply in Olympics or World Championships. Atos do it for the glory, Swiss Timing do. They charge a ton, and it's never going to be available for club level or even for things like England nationals. So we want to basically destroy the market, make it so any computer science student with a good idea and some time on their hands can start writing new visualizations and hopefully get to the point where you do this at any level.
How did you integrate that presentation you've just shown us with the electronic timing system?
Well, we didn't. All we did was the display. So luckily, Seiko, who have the contract with UKA, that's a chap called Phil James and a team of about 4 people are Seiko's office in Europe. They already have the, the transponder timing integrated with their photo finish. So we just agreed on a little text file and they would write a line into it with every time someone crossed a mat. And we've already got something that ties into the photo finish. So as soon as the finish links operator hits save, we say that file's changed, send it up to the web server. So it was just one more kind of file. We were getting it every few seconds and it didn't have that much to do. The previous year, it was a complete Heath Robinson contraption with a totally different electronic timing system and putting 2 things together, but showed people what was possible. You're not going to get this at your local park run anytime soon, though. But what we have been doing for quite a while is if you've got a cross-country match, Thames Hare and Hounds, we've got a board marshal up at the windmill with nothing to do for 40 minutes. They pull their phone out and they tap in the first 3 or 4 leaders and the finisher. And then your display is showing who's coming through. Like the varsity match, several times we know that Oxford's in the lead by 2 points at the 2 mile point, which makes it a bit less boring if you're waiting for them to come back into the field.
Yeah. So are you saying, take the National Cross Country Championships that a few of us love more than anything, if they had a way of recording each of the 4 laps in the men's, talking about the men's race, the team scores could come up? I mean, is that something that could be done now by people in this country?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure exactly which chip timing system they're using, but they are using one.
Yeah.
The problem with all of these things is developers are expensive and you get one shot. So if you're going to try and plan for that as a sort of, I don't know, if it was a UKA funded IT project, a couple of weeks of developer time, you're talking thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
But if we can have a little go in clubs here and there and gradually ease the kinks and build something that scales up, everyone will rather trust a system that's been used 100 times at club level and everyone understands it, rather than trying something big on a big one.
And so where, in terms of open track, I mean, where are you? Because is it your full-time job now? Is it your
Well, that's a bone of contention. I have a software company that at least was viable till this got out of the box, but Open Track's been taking more and more of my time, and we were planning to hibernate during the virus until this came along. But we've got one full-time employee. We have to pay for developers when there's money. The capital we've got is pretty much gone. So we were hunkering down and saying, we earn £1 when someone competes out of the entry fees, or we've got various contracts. We can afford so many developer days each month. We're a long way from saying we can have a salaried full-time software developer. So, and it'll be a constant frustration for years, because you can imagine all kinds of glorious things coming out of this that would take years of development. The wish list is 3 years in the future, and I don't want to talk up people's expectations too much. But this summer, it was just about to take off quite a bit through the UK, more and more open meetings, more countries was interested in signing up. Because Norway have selected it as the national system, and there was going to be a gradual rollout this summer. But yeah, I think there'll have to be some very careful juggling and prioritizing. How much is fixing bugs? How much is scaling up? And how much is building cool new features to motivate people?
Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it would transform the sport, especially the way results are communicated, as you said earlier.
Well, I don't know if you've been at any of the meetings that are running on it, but certainly for all the open meetings and county champs, I think we're doing that already. You're every time a young thrower throws his javelin in Wales, his mum already knows she can be watching the live display updating within 2 seconds and see where he is in the age group. It just hasn't really.
How easy would that be to recreate at like the 12 stage? Well, if everyone wore chips and maybe you had photo finishes or a mat across the top of the hill.
I think. Well, next time it happens. So when you say recreate it, you mean the real 12 stage actually wire people up a bit? I think pretty easy, but
I feel like that one would be closer to a track race and like a cross country.
It would. There's a lot of things that aren't quite finished, and we backed off a little bit on relays. The way we first designed them, we tried to pretend a road relay is like a 4x100 with more people, and it needs redesigning really. So at some point we've got to think through and build a proper relay module and all the rules for when's the declaration window, who puts the names and numbers in. But
with a year of pride with England athletics backing, I reckon it would be doable though, right, Andy?
Yes, absolutely. I think if we do need some official national stature in England, because if we know we've got that planning horizon, it's not a matter of I only dare program 1 or 2 weeks ahead. We can put someone on that and say our target is next year's physical 12 stage. We'll do everything right. We'll do some experiments at the 6 stage and the Surrey road relays and things like that.
I think another key value proposition to England athletics and governing bodies worldwide is the time it saves all of the volunteers who previously are writing everything down on paper, typing up on Excel, and all of that. Yeah. And here it can all be automated to a much greater extent.
I don't want to hijack this too much, but I'll send around a link afterwards to one of our standard presentations. But the slogan was always save time for the volunteers, make it more fun for the athletes, and help the sport to grow.
Well, I think entering, because I entered quite a lot of the Bedford lot. I think the first day there were a few names missing, but then I think you reconfigured it, and the next day there were a lot more people on.
There were a lot of.
You just type someone's name in, add them, and they're entered already.
Yeah,
which saves a lot of time for team managers as well.
I mean, we did have a lot of problems with those screens, which are designed for 300 people in a meeting, just crashing and people's first attempts not getting saved. And we were figuring out how to scale it up as we went. And every day we could handle twice as much. But yeah, that's the hardest thing would be mass events where 25,000 people decide to sign up. You want to run normal athletics and cross country, we're there now.
And with these events that, I mean, you have spoken about them. I know there's a few bubbling around, like the Isle of Man Easter Festival. You've got a virtual one going there. You said you've spoken to some of the national governing bodies. British Milers Club have shown some sort of interest.
Yep.
Maybe probably other ideas. Where do you stand commercially? Because you can't keep doing some of these things for free, can you?
well, what we've done, no, we can't. I mean, this one, to be honest, our finance director said there was no money left. We've got to hunker down for the summer. And then we dug ourselves in a bit of a hole doing this. But what we are hoping that we get some backing. It'll ultimately come from Sport England and the government printing money to keep various bits of the economy going. So we could say, they pay us to put these things on and clubs don't have to pay anything. The worst case is we might have to say, there's a £1 entry fee. So if anyone came to us and said that I'm going to set a £10 entry fee, £9 is going to go to charity, but we understand £1 will be the admin fee for the platform, we'll get your race open tomorrow. Yeah. And if you can get 5,000 people in, we'd love it.
For the virtual road relays, we did ask whether people would be happy to give a £1 or so towards open track for the organising. And I think 80% of people said they'd be happy with a small fee. Yeah. So that does seem doable for future events.
Yeah. And that's basically our business model anyway. The idea was to make it easy to put on a competition and maybe charge £1 per athlete for doing so. So in the real world, we would deduct a bit from the entry fee and the rest of it goes to the club. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the biggest thing you could, if you want us to have development resources, and I promise you it will all go into development for at least 5 years to come, best thing you can do is dream up a competition and get it open on our platform.
And the other thing is clubs would support it as well. So
yeah, well, I hope so, because it's great fun at Thames, and I don't see why clubs all over shouldn't say, let's just recreate our usual inter-club features.
I think they've already seen it can work from this event, so that they've all had a taste of like, that went pretty well, considering I didn't pay anything and maybe put a bit to charity. Imagine if they can actually run it properly on a smaller scale. My race normally has 500 people in it. They can do that. It's, I don't know, £4 to enter.
Yeah. I think as long as everyone works together and there's not too many like competing events to sort of spread people out too much, there's no reason why we can't have another similar event to the, or Ulster event that gets kind of similar numbers of people to the 12 stage, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, there's so many ideas. I mean, I hope the BMC will come out with, every couple of weeks, why not have a Wednesday night open meeting, and you've got to go and measure your local playing field a bit more accurately and provide some evidence. But we can recreate a lot of athletics over the summer, just with the concept that you've got to submit a bit of evidence and other people get to look at it. And maybe the referee thinks, that was a bit of a dodgy downhill course. I'm going to add 10 seconds to what you've sent in.
So can you just talk through those? Firstly, other than the Isle of Man, what other virtual races are already going on in the UK or planned currently?
So there's one that I've started coding up today, which you guys might find entertaining. One of the downsides with the virtual road relays was people taking lapped courses or downhill courses or wind-assisted courses. Yeah. So a group called the Straw Bear Striders are keen to host a 5K championship where there are no rules. Here we go, right. So the description's already on. So you're encouraged to find your local downhill wind-assisted route. And there's prizes just like in the Tour de France for the fastest mile split, the biggest downhill, and then all sorts of prizes like that. So it's a fun event. It won't get 5,000 entered, but it's definitely something to get people interested in virtual racing talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Back off that screen.
Yeah, here we go.
So on if somebody or a group of people come up with an idea, they talk it through, map out the rules and regulations, if you like, and then they just come to one of you open track and say, this is it, and then you go away, code it or set it up, or how does technicalities work? I mean, what's the split of responsibility? How's that work?
It's pretty much point and click to set up competitions. But if you come up with a scoring system that we can't currently do, we'll tell you, and there might be a charge. But it's we've got a ton out of the box. Gupton, our ops manager, has been frantically writing down the manual on how to set up a competition, and it's there and linked from our webpage. So if you skim through it, we want to end up with a growing number of people who know how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
The first time a new organizer comes along, a new club, we've got to set up a few records, but then we can say, Mark, we're putting you in charge of all competitions where the organizer is Tonbridge, isn't it? And then you can create new ones anytime.
Right, I'm with you, yeah.
There will be some kind of call for volunteers. We've got a forum going, and we'll try to ask for people with time on their hands who'll learn how to do this and help others set them up.
Right.
And then if there's a flow of money, we've got to click some stuff. But anyone can fairly easily set it up to take money into their club's account. So if they want to do a charity fundraiser or even keep the club going, then they're welcome to use it for that.
So if you take the British Miners Club, they wanted to get involved with something around the 6th of May, and I think they've had some contact with you. They also wanted to tap into what we learned from the relay and the thousands of people that showed an interest. And I think the great thing about the relay was that we see what Parkrun do on a weekly basis with this social running type scenario and the Keep Fit. What the relay did, it wasn't just about the elite and the normal people that do the relay, it was the club runners, and some of the social running clubs got involved. And therefore there was not only a national buzz about it, there was within a club, there was a buzz about it. So it almost brought the two sides together, I felt.
I think it gave the elite athletes some competition, something to aim for, but it gave all the club runners a way to stay connected when we're as distant as we are now. And I think that's why it catered to both so well.
I think there's also a benefit to virtual running that goes beyond just the fact that we're in shutdown, in the way that you can do the scoring. So suddenly there was new ways of scoring the 12 stage, which meant you could get mixed teams, and suddenly men would care how well their ladies did, because it would affect their team. Then you can also put the different age graded teams and vet teams all off one run. So for example, I would do my one run and it would count towards my boys and girls team, towards my age graded team, towards my 12 stage team. For the women, there was like a 6 stage as well as a 12 stage.
So I was chatting to John Mulkeen, who's the web editor for World Athletics, and we were like coming up with some combo teams. So from the results, we worked out a 12 and 12 and a 12 and 6 and a 6 and 6, and no one had to run any more to do that. They had the Scottish relays as well. I know some people ran at the weekend and had their time into 2 competitions doing one run. I know Chris Jones got a bit stuck with that because he ran on the Thursday and then got injured and wanted to count that.
Yeah, he tried that one on with me,
but you can do 2 competitions with one run, or you can decide to analyse it in a different way. And I think what was also really good is obviously because it's virtual, you can get the club together even if they're spread out over the world. So I think there was about 8 or 9 countries we had legs running.
Yeah.
There was a guy who's in the Netherlands. I think he's a Thames Harrier. Lou Metzeler ran in Holland. And then there was a few in America. Nick Earl ran in Australia. You know, you can be anywhere, but you can still be part of the team. So you get all these collegiate athletes go off to America, and they can still run with their, you know, their younger athletes who are still at school or uni who've grown up here, and it's like, oh, we're part of the team, rather than
they might not even get banned for violating NCAA rules if it's virtual. Who knows?
That's true. Yeah. Does this count?
So you could have if there was a period of miles, you could have people representing their universities, their club, whatever, their age group or their nation or their continent or whatever, couldn't you?
We'll have to try and do something with the university soon, given it's meant to be Bucks 10K and Bucks track are both meant to be coming up both meant to be in the next few weeks, and we know kind of how much kind of we tend to get with Bucks Cross and how much
the Isle of Man Festival is very university orientated. So I'm currently speaking to Leeds, Manchester, Edinburgh, and a few other unis about that. And soon we'll be reaching out to Bucks to propose.
Yeah, we could do like a Bucks in May or something.
Guys, I'm going to have to move on shortly, but if I just leave you with one thought. Right now, today, our system is not very good at having hundreds of people in one heat, but it can do almost anything else. So if you're planning a big miles thing, I would see it like a track and field championships. 1 week you have the heats, next week you have the semis, next week you have the finals. Then we could handle as many runners as you want. We would have 2 or 3 chances, and we could do that right now. Anything bigger with thousands of people running together needs more development, needs to be further off in the summer, and we'd have to target, something else will come at the expense of that development. I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to move on, but Richard can answer anything needed from Open Track, hopefully.
Okay,
thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Cheers, Andy.
We look forward to all your ideas after the weekend. Thanks.
Sorry, Andy. Bye, Andy.
Bye.
Thanks, Andy.
I'm just thinking for the BMC stuff, we could potentially just seed it on PBs like they do at the standard BMC races or something anyways. And seed it into
the system's already geared up. It pulls in all the data from Power 10, so it knows everyone's PBs. So it's very easy for BMC to seed their races.
So what's the best way forward with that, Richard? So, because I think there's a consensus that, it's quite a good idea. There's some, a mile, from what we learned, you've got to be careful of not running on like a 300-metre loop, things like that. James was quite keen to have a little bit of a skewed option where you can have maybe a race where people were actually running downhill and getting really fast times, or they could take the more normal option of going for flat courses. So I don't know. There's these things.
I think for the BMC races, for it to be fair, I think giving people the choice of 2 different race options, either on a road only as an out and back, or on the track where they're not going off the Strava distance, but they're going off the lap distance.
Go on the track though, can we?
Sorry?
We can't.
Well, I reckon I don't know. There might be a few tracks that aren't closed. I don't know if they're allowed to be used or not.
Right. Okay.
Or football pitches could
think through how we inch something forward, or what I do going back to the BMC, and how it's financed and things like that. Because I don't think they've got a budget to sling at it.
Well, if England Athletics fund Open Track, then the BMC races should be free. Otherwise, currently BMC races, people are used to paying a few quid towards that. So that could be
something. It just, it gives them a responsibility. But they can pay £1 or £2 or whatever. Can they? You can set that. Yeah.
No one's spending any money at the minute anyway. No one's spending any money at the moment anyway.
You're not getting it either, some of them.
True.
So, Jonny, you mentioned an interesting point earlier about injury with the races. But But I feel like virtual racing opens up the potential for that to be less of an issue. So let's say if on a Wednesday night you've got a bit of a niggle, well, you could choose not to race that night. Instead, do your BMC or National Road Relays another night. With the road relays, it's all split over 4 days. Isle of Man, instead of being a 3-day event where people always get injured, now it's been shared over 10 days. So hopefully it leads to much less injury-related issues from races or going into races.
Yeah, a lot of our lads were waiting until later on in the week just because they might have had a niggle or were coming back from something, so I wanted to leave it as late as possible. So it was quite helpful.
I know, even James said, he was like, I'm going to run on the last day because my calves have been a bit funny. So some people could get it done. Some people, I know a lot of people just did it on the Saturday because they were ready. I was like, well, I'll go do it now. But
it was interesting with the one we did, that the spikes in terms of submitting definitely seem to be on the Saturday and the Tuesday and then the Wednesday, which is kind of, well, Saturday and Tuesday being tends to be most people's typical session days. People doing it to replace their sessions, and Wednesday just because it was the last day and all of that kind of thing. But
good. Anybody else got any points? We just got to think who takes this forward with anybody. I mean, I'll have to go back and report to the BMC, I guess. And do you know
with this BMC idea, would it be like that'd be like an individual thing, wouldn't it?
Well,
or would it? What sort of ideas were they having?
I mean, you could have teams, or if you're going with what Andy said, with heats and then a second round and the third round, that would be the easiest from open track's point of view. I think he was saying that. So you get all the entries. However, you seed them accordingly. Round 1 will take place between these days, and round 2, whenever. It means you've got to run 3 times potentially, or whatever it might be, which is probably not attractive to some.
I guess if you did like 1 a month and you have like 1 race each week, then it's just replacing your Saturday session. You do it about then. You'll got the heats on the Saturday, then you got a week later you got the semis, and then a week later you got the final, and then you got rest for the next one. And you don't have to do all of them. Maybe you do the May and the July one, or something like that. It depends how long we're stuck in lockdown, I guess.
I'm just thinking, even instead of that, and if people only want to just run once, you see it like the BMC currently doing. You have like an A race, as it were, with maybe the fastest 100 on PBs in it, a B race, a C race, and so on, and just split it up that way on the open track system.
Why technically, Richard, does it have to be split up like that? Why?
So it's just the limit of once there's more than 100 people in a certain race, the servers get loaded and it slows them down. That's the only limiting factor.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So a bit to think about.
I saw another race. I think I was going to say Podium 5K have put out something recently about they're planning to do a race where I don't know if that's through open track or what they're doing, but they're doing the first one is like next week, and the top 128 men and women get put through to the next round, and then they've got 2 weeks to run their 5K, and then they half it until there's 4 left. No, I cut out. And then the top 4 race each other, and there's like prize money on that. I don't know if that's a different way of doing heats and semis and stuff.
The Helpstone Harriers, which is another sort of joke running group, they've also been doing that knockout style of running. Interestingly, it always seems to centre around 5K. There's no 10K races or 1500 races. It's really
a few people have mentioned 10s and miles, but
I was also wondering, in 2 weeks I think it was meant to have been the marathon, London Marathon. Do you guys think people would be interested in doing a virtual London Marathon? There won't be 5,000 entries, but
someone today actually mentioned about doing I don't know how to pronounce it, the marathon or something. What is it? Where so you do it and you split it up between 6 people or something. So then each team enters.
Bit like an Ekiden.
However you want.
A
so
relay.
for example, exactly. So it doesn't have to be equal legs. It can be one person runs an 8, one does 6, and then the rest might do 3. Like that.
Yeah. That could be a fun.
I actually want to go and do a marathon on their own, but maybe that way at least it's like a marathon.
You could even try and, if you offered a few different ways of splitting it, that might be a good way to get it into a few different races. So you've got the marathon where everyone does a quarter of it, or like, you know, you got 2 people doing 2 half marathons.
For the marathon weekend,
26 doing a mile each. But
there could be a set of a few races where people either do the marathon, do a half marathon, or make up a quarter 10k distance. That can be a competition of its own.
That might be a way to get people in different ones.
Thinking more long term than that as well. In the calendar, we saw the Loughborough International was set for 2 months' time or something like that. And we were thinking whether it'd be possible to set that up as a virtual competition. All the racing should be doable. Hopefully by then it's much easier for people to use the tracks. Maybe some of the lockdown gets loosened, and that could all be run through people submitting their results, taking photos of their jump in the sandpit or their throw from the hammer cage. So there's possibilities wider than just middle distance running.
And then you just link, like you did with the Strava link, just link that photo after their declared result.
There'd still be the potential to cheat, of course. There always is, but hopefully people's PBs makes it clear when someone has cheated.
That's good. I mean, my one of my thoughts was that, you know, you have in the summer, when we get going properly, you have 25 3,000 venues with 3,000 metre races going on around the country, and those results all logged in, and they're coming up live on the evening for people sitting at home, where it's not just Trafford or wherever. And we'd relax the rules on officials and stuff, just so a coach could actually record them or whatever. Wouldn't have to go on Power 10, wouldn't have to be official, but just, you know, to the nearest second or whatever. It would be...
So you're thinking of a post-shutdown world?
Yeah. I don't know. I just think some of these things we talk about in our sport, it's so dependent on getting the right level of officials, right number of officials. They're in short supply. It's cumbersome, doesn't encourage the good part runners, for example, to go on the track. You know, all these things, because it's really weird, our sport, where, you know, the local guys playing football on the local park know all the Premiership footballers, you know, and they support them and everything else. All the park runners wouldn't have a clue who some of the fastest laps were, or the runners were in that.
Yeah.
And if they were rocking up and you had 50, 60 people, 100 people turning up at Tonbridge track, just log on the night, do your 3K, get your time, log it on the system, and then during the night, you know, you could have 2,500 people would have run a 3,000 and logged it on the system, and it would be coming up, and some would just be doing it for the first time. And we've got veterans at the track, have never been on a track for 30, 40 years since they were at school. And then you've got somebody wanting to get kudos. I mean, decent distance runners, they go to do a park run, get the kudos of being the fastest in the country or setting the course record. So it's no different from them going to run a 3,000. It's just a little bit less official. At the 3,000 they run, you know. So
I think there's a lot to be said about integrating park run, power of 10, and all the results that get put on after the events. Then open track, which can get all the results as they happen, and putting that all into one easy to sort of follow system, which means that everyone can see how well everyone is doing, and it helps that funnel from park run to elite, motivating people all the way and giving them people to follow.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
I don't know.
I mean, James is probably knackered. He don't want to put his hand up for anything.
I'm happy to do stuff.
And he's got a job. Massi and Jonny, are you working as well at the moment?
Yeah, I was working. Well, I say working. I was trying to.
I'm in the last year of my degree, so I'm just finishing stuff off.
Yeah.
So I had a project in, and then I do have an exam, but how it works yet? They don't seem to know how it works yet either.
And Richard, you're freelancing, aren't you?
So.
Yeah, but at the moment, full-time helper for Open Track. So I'm very keen to push all these virtual races and anything after shutdown life. For me, I think a way to go forwards is getting all the individual clubs in the UK, all 2,000 of them, set up on the system and make it as easy for them to organise their own races, make them familiar with how that's all done. I know at Thames Hare and Hounds, people are very keen to do weekly races of any level. I don't know, though, if that's the same thing for other clubs, which are maybe more competitive and less relaxed.
Yeah. And is there anything required from the clubs to do that, or is that just you trawling around through Power 10 data and stuff?
So what do you mean?
Well, you said you want to set up 2,000 clubs in the country on the system. Is that the club something, or is that
everyone's individual athletes? They're all registered. The setting up clubs is more finding a sort of a head of racing, head of event organising for every club, who can lead the push to using Open Track. Yeah. So at Tonbridge, for example, I'd love it if you got used to using the Open Track system, knew how to organise events, and organised a half dozen events for the coming 2 months.
Michael Ellis, who did the he liaised with you with Open Track on the Tonbridge Twilight meeting, so he's pretty good. Yeah. So we did.
I wonder if it's worth like Open Track maybe putting on like a webinar thing for like people from clubs to teach them how to use the platform. Or
we're starting those. There's one next Thursday at 10 a.m. We've yet to sort of set up the link and all that, but we'll make sure to email that round.
Brilliant. Yeah. And you've got all the emails of people that entered the race.
Yeah. So that will be easy to send that out. Another thing that we're looking to do, which I think Andy is working on today, is writing up a little proposal for seeing if anyone else has free time and is willing to help. And that'll go on the website later this week, and we'll also look to send it to people, and that hopefully build up the Open Track team from one paid employee and a couple of helpers to a lot more helpers.
What skills will you need for that?
I think it's mainly just getting people ready to learn how to use the Open Track system. That's the main thing, and marketing events, spreading the word of Open Track.
Okay, so it's not programming as such or anything.
I'm quite happy to put my name forward now. I don't know if that's any use.
That's
I think you've got my email. I'm quite enjoying doing little projects like this at the minute, and I'm applying for a master's for next year in like UX design and stuff like that. So actually, this is perfect experience for me to. Well, I'm enjoying it anyway, and actually, I think it's good for the sport that I enjoy and love. But it's on a personal level, it's also good development for myself. I don't know exactly how I can help, but I'd like to get more involved if I can. So I'll just put my name forward now if you need me.
Thank you. I'll be in touch. And I think it's one of those things. I mean, I didn't really know how I'd be of help when joining, but you can find your niche and you can push for your own niche, for whatever your personal goals are, and pushing that.
Okay, brilliant. Good.
And Mark, you mentioned about back-end coding. I messaged Will Mycroft, who I don't know if you guys all saw. He made the great
animation. It was amazing.
And
you know Will because you probably trained at Cottage Relocated with him.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I know him well from that. And he said he's sort of keen to help with other things like that if and when it comes.
Yeah, I think, as I've said a few times, I think there's a bit of a window of opportunity to focus some really bright minds on how the sport's presented and what Andy was saying the open track's view of things mirrors what I've been thinking for some time. He said, I haven't got the skills or the time to do it. But so yeah, it's quite exciting. I think the potential.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I can help. Obviously, I work still at the minute, but like in terms of promoting and pushing the name forward, I'm happy to still.
Yeah.
Pretty much at my max.
Event ideas, marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Event ideas and stuff like that.
Brand manager.
But of course, I think a lot of it, the open track guys have been very, very good with us, but it's still a commercial enterprise, and that's the bit that worries me a little bit. You want money flowing in, and our sport is notorious for people doing things for free, from officials, coaches, everybody, and it's cheap compared to so many other sports, and that makes it really difficult to invest in progress. And I think people are willing to pay a little bit more for that experience. I wish there was a flow track equivalent in the UK. Things like that, which I subscribe to. And I expect a few thousand people would, and we just seem to be lagging behind. And all these things then lead on to making better names of the really good athletes to promote themselves and actually gather some sponsors and things like that. It all starts to flow a bit better. But at the moment, we just try and do everything on the cheap, in favours. I don't think that does the sport any good, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, if you see it out in America, if you look at any reasonably good collegiate athlete, they've all got a ton of followers on Instagram. Like, I'm talking thousands.
Really?
They probably all know who each other are, just because everyone's so up to date with all what's going on. Whereas here, it's not quite like that. I think obviously if you race someone every week, you know who they are and you know who the good guys are. But if you're just a recreational runner or something that just enjoys it, you have as Mark said earlier, you have no idea. So
okay, terrific. I think what I'll do, I'm glad Andy suggested recording this now, because I can I can use it to let the guy from the BMC see it, the James Thee, one or two others. I can put it on YouTube, and I don't think anyone said anything untoward at all. I mean, it's going to be quite long. It's probably going to be over an hour, but it might get a few people thinking and, coming up with a few ideas. So I think it was a good idea to record the section we did anyway. So, yeah.
As a final remark, I feel like it's lovely how through adversity, as in the shutdown of the UK economy, that it feels like the running community has grown stronger. It's quite nice. Yeah,
brilliant. Oh, well, I've learned a lot there, so appreciate all your time. Yeah. Thanks for all your efforts, and let's see what we can come up with next then.
Thank you for organising.
Too much work.
Good work, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. See you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.